The Land of the Dead is this really colorful underworld, and it's not specific to any mythology. We're not really all that clear about the rules.
The world of the living is actually much more dead than the world of the dead, you know, which is much more alive.
The underworld seems like a lot more fun than the upstairs part.
Just the opposite. It's party time. On Land of the Dead, the characters, they had to be stylized, fun, and nice to look at. And at the same time, we didn't want it to do something gross.
The horror element is definitely, it's whimsical and fairy tale-ish. Although I appreciate that we're keeping some of that in there, because it's the Land of the Dead.
There's been a mistake. I'm not dead.
In the story of the Corpse Bride, there are two very, very different worlds. There's the land of the living, and there's the land of the dead.
They're both good, and that's not the problem. It's just the problem of being caught between two different worlds.
The land of the living is where Victor and Victoria, his wife-to-be, live. It's a very repressed, uptight, frigid society, loosely based on a period around about the Victorian times.
What impropriety is this? You shouldn't be alone together.
And it's everything about the styling of that period has tended to accentuate that sort of repression.
I mean, we are trying to contrast sort of the rigidness and formality of our Land of the Living with organic openness of Land of the Dead.
I've got a dwarf, and I'm not afraid to use him. What's going on here? Where am I? Who are you?
We've divided the worlds by color palette. Land of the Living, we didn't want a black and white look or a sepia look, but we wanted something kind of close to a tin type or a daguerreotype. But instead of desaturating the film, we thought we'd paint the characters and the sets in those tones, and hopefully it would just give it a little more punch.
We had to create all these characters for this film, and we have Land of the Living and Land of the Dead. So they were kind of two groups that they were working separately, and at the same time they had to have the same style.
The Land of the Living characters have been probably the most difficult to produce because the Land of the Dead characters are much more vibrant, the colours and the way that they're sculpted. It's a much easier job to handle those.
They're much more colorful, they're much more stylized. So we kind of play off sort of the symbolism of the fact that the people in the Land of the Living are pretty much dead and the people in the Land of the Dead are pretty lively.
In looking at the characters of the film, we're using a lot of sort of the British stereotypes, especially with that kind of upstairs-downstairs quality, which is literally Land of the Living being upstairs and downstairs being Land of the Dead. So I think we're sort of tweaking the basic British social stratification.
We're moving this wedding party upstairs.
Upstairs? I didn't know we had it upstairs. Sounds creepy. Let's go!
Although we wanted to keep some of the influences in architecture and sort of scope of the Land of the Living, we've created a very bright and colorful and kind of crazy world. The implication there is, of course, that the dead are free from all the restrictions that we once lived under in the Land of the Living.
I'm so sorry. Actually, though, I feel great.
The humor, the darkness of the humor and the quirkiness of some of these background characters in the Land of the Dead is very engaging.
Get to the good part.
Victor meets a lot of very, very interesting and funny characters and finds out that life in the Land of the Dead is pretty high octane, you know.
And he becomes almost drawn into that society. And how the two worlds meet at the end is part and parcel of the story of The Corpse Bride.